Guys, welcome back to another episode of It's Positively Lana. Today, as promised, I have a co-host with me. It is another Alana, and she will be joining us through this Seeing Double series. Today's video deep dives into our own childhoods and race relations in the United States through our lenses that we are presenting. So I want to make that very clear before we get started. And if there are comments, questions, or concerns, you are more than welcome to put them into the comments section. This is part 1 of 2 videos, so let's put our money where our mouth is and let's start this taboo topic conversation.
Co-host series, 2 Alanas.
Yeah, I'm about it.
All right, so jumping back, so right now, you and I are living in 2021. We are women of mixed races. Do you want to just give a little bit of background on yourself and your family and kind of what you have to say about like the state of racism that is very apparent to everyone, even if you don't see it as a problem at this point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I am part Black and part Filipino. My mother's side of the family is the Asian side of my genes, and my dad's side is the Black side of my genes. I am far removed from my Black family, my Black culture. I didn't grow up with my dad or his side of the family, so I was raised by my single mother and her side of the family. We grew up in, I grew up in predominantly suburban white neighborhoods, or just in white neighborhoods in general. My early childhood years were definitely in the suburbs. I went to predominantly white schools. Through middle school and high school, there was a little bit of maybe a year or two of public school in there, but it was predominantly white schools, predominantly private schools, and I have predominantly white friends. So being so removed from my Black culture growing up, as an adult, I find it sometimes a little uncomfortable to try to get comfortable in Black spaces, even though my skin is Black. Sometimes I feel like my mentality, and due to my upbringing and my environments, sometimes I see the world through the lens of whiteness, because this is how I had to get friends. This is how I fit in with people, with my environments. I had to blend in with them. So trying to make it comfortable for me to be around them, I've developed a lens, a way to see and interact with the world through assimilating with whiteness. So when I find myself in white spaces, I'm a little more comfortable to be myself. But I'm also told that I'm an Oreo. I talk white. I sound white. And I usually hear that from Black folks. They're telling me, you sound white. What? What does it mean, sound white? I'm sorry, I speak proper English. It's English, it's not white. But I mean, as we're becoming more racially aware of what is going on in our country, I understand where that's coming from now. But hearing that from my Black peers, I felt like that has really impacted how I interact as an adult. Because now that I'm an adult and I'm in Black spaces, I can see my whiteness showing up in Black spaces, and how I move differently. There's a cultural difference in how I operate in Black spaces, predominantly Black spaces, than I do in white spaces. And sometimes I'm even afraid to even talk in Black spaces. I'm like, they're all gonna think I'm white. You know? It's kind of harmful. It's just judgmental. But I think a lot of that stems back into our childhood too, because I never felt Black enough to be hanging out with Black kids. I don't know if it was because I'm mixed race or if it's because of the way that I speak, but I just never really felt fully accepted, or it was okay for me to be me without, I don't know, being mean to me. I love everybody. I wanted to be everybody's friend, but it's why are you so mean to me? I didn't do anything to you. And then the same thing with the Asian folks. They weren't necessarily mean to me, but they didn't really want to be my friend, because I was a little too dark to start to be Asian. And that's the thing with the Filipino culture too, or Filipino people, is that we are considered the Negroes of the AAPI communities, because we are darker than our other Asian friends and family members. So it kind of got you know, the bottom of the totem pole, I guess you want to say. I'm not really sure what the right word to use for this, for like, I don't know, a hierarchy, scheme of races, of course created by white supremacy, but like, because everybody bought into that, like both sides of my gene pool are at the bottom of this racial hierarchy scheme. You did mention though, like, how do we see racism today? It's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's in what we are being fed on TV, in our books, in our advertisements, in our grandparents, and how they've ingrained some of these ideas.
Yes, grandparents. That's a good one. So I do just want to, as you're continuing to elaborate on this, I do just want to ask, and because you pointed out something very, very unique, and I think something that also comes from my perspective, and that's really what we're doing here, is we are having an uncomfortable conversation about where we kind of sit as mixed race individuals in kind of this menagerie of what's happening on, like, if we're going to put it as two extremes, the black and white side, we fall in the gray area. Always lived in the gray area, and you and I have kind of talked about that already, that it's like it's a gray area of living, because you can use the different lenses that you now recognize had been, one, instilled in you through socialization of where you grew up, but also what you've now come to see as how you saw the world, but then how society saw you. And one big thing, so my background is, my family is, or the family I grew up with, my great-grandparents are from Monterrey, Mexico. I want to make that clear. So like, still my biological family, but it's like, I didn't know my dad's side of the family, which is the black side of the family. And my mom is half Mexican and half German. So we predominantly grew up with the Mexican side of the family, where no one spoke Spanish outside of the house. It was pretty much like assimilate to being American and forget your roots and make sure that you blend in and don't stick out in any way, shape, or form. And then you get to me, where, and I feel like we share a similar situation where it's, you can't help but stick out because you're never enough for anybody on any side of it. And that's frustrating, because the way that you had explained it, you're like, if you're saying like you got pretty much the short end of the stick on both ends, where it's like, I'm not black enough, but I'm also not Asian enough and considered to be the black Asians on this side, and neither group wants to like accept me for just who I am. And yeah, so like that's a difficult situation to be handled, especially as a child. Like,
Mm-hmm.
So did your family itself pass along traditions of Filipino culture or anything like that, or did they kind of assimilate to American whiteness as well?
I feel like my family passed down like Filipino food, maybe some dress, maybe some dance, but tongue was not passed down. And, you know, while my grandfather was alive, some of my cousins were talking to him to like know more about our family past and what it was like for him in the Philippines, and just more about our family tree. And I guess like at the time when I was younger, it didn't seem like it was important for me to know these things, so I missed out on those conversations. But as far as like us living in this country, I feel like they really did assimilate to whiteness more than they wanted to hold on to Filipino culture. You know, with that being like, you have to have X amount of dollars in your bank accounts to be successful. And I think that also ties into like our Filipino culture as well. Like, they want us to be doctors. They want us to have that American dream of being rich and having the white picket fence and having all the expensive toys and the expensive car, and just being I feel like that's part of the American dream, is striving for wealth. And that also is a characteristic from the Filipino culture as well. Like, being wealthy is a good thing. Being a doctor is a good thing, and that is expected of you. But my mother was always like the black sheep of the family, and I definitely take after her. So we rejected being rich, and we rejected being in the medical field, and we nurtured our artistic and creative sides. So screw the American dream. Do what I want.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Isn't that the American dream right there? Do whatever you want, the freedom to do whatever you want.
Only for some people.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, people like you and me, we were never encouraged to do whatever we want. We were told we can't do whatever we want, therefore oppress us.
well, so I think maybe that's where my mom's ideals came in a little different, because I don't feel that she ever really forced. Well, she did say I was going to go to college, so I ended up being the first generation college graduate for my family, like my immediate family. But I was always really good at school, so I didn't really necessarily care that I was like going to go to college no matter what. Not many people know this, but it's like I actually took my ASVABs to like join the Air Force originally, and then she said go to 1 year of school and see if you want to keep going or if you want to join the Air Force. I wanted to be an environmental engineer, which would have been a completely different life path for me.
Yeah.
I think I realized though, as I was getting older, that I don't really do well with authority necessarily. And not like I'm just like, yeah, like fuck the system, like constantly like trying to uproot stuff. But I don't do well with this bureaucracy for the sake of bureaucracy. So joining a military branch I don't think would have been the best fit for me. But when it came to, she's always told me that I could be anything that I wanted to be. If anything, it was once I got out into the real world, society started to tell me, well, your mom may believe in you, however, these are the things that you have to like tackle and jump over just to get the same level of respect, or even close, a smidgen. Like, no matter how exceptionally black you are, you'll never be able to get to like that pinnacle of something, because regardless of who you are on the inside, this is what you look like on the outside, and that is going to be the factor that is deterring you, which that's a slap in the face, right?
Absolutely. You can have all the education, you can have the best education, you could be rich, you could be someone with an important position, but they won't know that about you, because the first thing that they're going to see is your skin. And what has society conditioned us throughout history to think about dark skin?
And I think that the way that you presented that is more wide-reaching than just what we're talking about here, especially for like the American society, because you brought in for people of Filipino descent that you're considered to be darker skinned. And it's like, if you don't have porcelain skin, which I guess across many cultures, why is it that whiteness is associated with cleanliness, with hierarchy? Why is it that that's like the pinnacle of just being lighter skinned no matter what? And that's the part that is just so frustrating, because it's just like, that has nothing to do with ability, with who you are as a human being, yet it is still sprinkled and very deeply needed into the social systems that we have today.
Agreed.
And have had.
Yeah. I agree. It's like, why did that even happen? Why was that even needed? You know, I look into colonialism, but we like we were talking about before, we can look back into imperialism. But I haven't studied enough of imperialism to really have like a solid opinion about how white, have the more lighter and the whiter and closer we are to having porcelain skin was more strived towards. That's what people wanted. That's what made you more clean, more worthy, more lovable. I mean, I know that you probably know more about imperialism than I do, but like I see this in colonialism and then everything moving forward from there, like human zoos, human zoos. They wanted something that looks scary, something that looks barbaric, cannibalistic, and they went on a hunt to find just that, but that was only just that in their image. So when they finally found this black body whose teeth was jagged, like they were like shaped into little or not jags, but like little points, they're like, oh, that's our barbarian. That person looks cannibalistic, because all the black people that they had brought over and put into literal zoos with animals, they gave them props of like spears and weapons and skulls. It's just like crazy props to make them look like they were like animalistic, as they put them in zoos with animals. So then when they took away the animals, just made them into human zoos, they made humans the spectacle. And they were all black. So, you know, in order for you to break whatever sense of humanity that you have, to recognize another human being despite their skin tone, they had to break that humanity down and tell society, tell the viewers that when you see these people, which is our black skin, you're going to see fear. They're trying to instill fear, animalistic, like we are not human, and that we are meant to be kept in cages and be made for the white person's entertainment. So when the people who were in human zoos finally decided, well, I don't want to be part of these human zoos anymore, I want to be treated like a human being and I want to go back home, white folks weren't having that, because they were making a lot of money off of us being a spectacle and us being in a zoo. So, you know, when I see those things repeating themselves in history, whether that being, you know, colonialism or in slavery or in Jim Crow, and even to present day with Kaepernick taking a knee, it's all these little ways of saying, hey, stop treating black people like we're just your entertainment. Stop treating us like we're less than human. Anytime that happens, there's always an angry mob to want to make sure that you remain in your place. But how do they keep us in our place, right? They keep feeding us the same stereotypes, like the doll test. How has our society managed to maintain that whiteness is superior to blackness?
Can you explain a little bit about what you're setting up here for the doll test?
Yeah. So there's a study that's done with children. I think they're like 3 to 7 years old, I believe. They're very young children. And there's 2 studies done. One is done with a white doll and a black doll. And then there's another study done where it's a drawing of a little white girl and a little black girl. It's really dark. And then they have shades in between. So they ask these kids these same questions. And mind you, all these kids are multi-race. You know, we have white kids, there's black kids, Latino kids. I'm not sure if I saw any Asian kids in the study. I'd have to look at it again. But for sure there was black, Latino, and white kids in this study. And they asked these kids, which doll is the good doll? They point to the white doll, or the white little girl that's drawn, or one of the lighter shades. Which doll is the bad doll? And they all point to the black doll and the darker shades. Who is the smart doll? Whiter. Who's the dumb? The blacker. Who's beautiful? The whiter. Who's ugly? The darker. And when they ask questions like that, they ask the kids, well, why do you think this doll is the good doll? And the little girl, this little white girl who was answering this question, she says, she's the good doll because she looks like me. And they ask her, well, why did you point to the black doll when she's the bad doll? And she's like, well, it's because she's black. You know, and these little kids, they think that they're getting the right answers, because nobody's correcting them to telling them these are not the right answers. But this is what these young children's minds are being conditioned to believe. Like these little kids, little brown kids, were just so excited that they were getting the answers right. That the black doll is the dumb doll, the stupid doll, scary. Like, the point of the test is to show us that we have been conditioned from a very, very young age to associate all things good, great, worthy, beautiful, smart with whiteness.
And isn't that crazy? Just what you're pointing out right there, because a color or a shade, a hue, does not have any of those connotations. That is a societal construct. That is something that is built into the fabric of socialization, of how these kids are brought up, of what we've accepted. Because we could say the same as easily, and like I think that's what's hard for people to kind of like break out of their pattern to recognize, is that it'd be just as easy for you to say, oh, like purple is the color of trustworthiness, and purple makes me feel or emote this way, or I tie these values or ideas, concepts to the color purple. But no, we've picked that in society. It's like, oh, if you have skin that is fairer, or if just, I mean, in general, just like whiteness, that is the thing that all of these ideals are tied to. And it's just like, it never had to be that way. It really didn't. But this is what we've settled for. So,
well, I think that we as a society had to make that happen. Like, how could you get yourself to beat and kill another human being? How do you get yourself to get into that spot? Like, you have to break your psyche. You have to make a way for your brain to cope with you witnessing or partaking in violence against another human being who doesn't look like you, and you're being told and conditioned they are not human beings.
Yeah, I think that's what you touched on earlier, and now are bringing it to the forefront of what you spoke on about imperialism. Is it's a tool. Teaching somebody how to dehumanize another human is a tool, and fear is a very, very strong motivator to be able to disassociate that, or to create that space to say, oh, like, it's okay because they're not human.